We're going to look now at our core value, number 3, diverse unity. And I'm going to bring up the idea of our trio of doctrine, devotion, and duty, although in this video these are going to be mostly integrated and so not treated as separate things, but we'll highlight them as we go along. So we have a core value in diverse unity. And so the core statement, well, first of all, let me say, this is not identical to the statement that we have formally adopted as a church. It's communicating the same information, but in a way that I think might be more accessible for a short video. So our core statement is that we deeply value our unity in Christ in the midst of the richness of diversity. The diversity of his body. And so we would think of this about the global church and also in our congregation. And so then this is an example of a local church. So we value the diversity that is there around the world, around our community, as well as the diversity that we have in our congregation. So I want to highlight these two things, the unity that we have and the richness of the diversity that we have. So the unity, we deeply value the unity we have, and it is a unity in Christ, that our identity as Christians makes us a part of a single community. And so as the Apostle Paul wrote in Ephesians, he says there's one Lord, one faith, one baptism. We are one body in Jesus Christ. And so in becoming Christians, we become a part of a single community. And this identity in Christ is the redeemed version of the core identity we have simply as human beings, that all of us, from any culture, any background, we're made in the image of God, we're all broken, and salvation by faith in Christ is available to all. And so we have these wonderful things in unity together. The diversity we experience and that we pursue as a church is in many kinds. And so in the world and in our church, there are many languages that people grew up being fluent in, and there are many languages that people learn later in life. We have many different cultures, and these cultures both are the cultures of different countries as well as the cultures of different parts of the United States or even different parts of a state like Michigan. We value the diversity of age. So we are thrilled to have a range from infants through those retired and in all categories in between. We value diversity in education. So again, we have some people who have many degrees and others not many at all. And we value that. It's a rich part of who we are, of socioeconomic status, of the financial situation. And we think that is an important thing about who we are. And we value the diversity of people's work and careers, and the list goes on. So the question is, why do we value these things? One of the key reasons we value diversity is that we're less vulnerable to dangers. And so let me give you an image of this. A number of years ago, my family and I were traveling in Colorado, and we were looking at these mountainsides where all of the trees were dead or dying. And you couldn't see it in being evergreens. They were all green. And yet when you get up close, you could see these trees are dying. And whole mountainsides were dying all at once. And the reason is they were all the same species in the same age. And so the same insect could kill them all at once. There was no strength in saying this tree would be vulnerable, but the one next to it is safe from it. And so when we have diversity, we are less vulnerable to all sorts of dangers. This can be in terms of ideas, that we adopt ideas that are dangerous ideas left on their own. That there are certainly temptations that different cultures or different groups of people are more vulnerable to. And when we have a diversity among us, we are protected by the fact that we don't all have that same vulnerability. We can experience God in many expressions, that God is a very rich God that is not just one kind of, doesn't express himself in just one way of being. And so he gifts people in different ways to express different aspects of his character, different ways in which we can experience him. And so the reverse is that we can express God, that we can show him in a greater number of ways. And so if somebody is very analytical, they can express God in very analytical ways, but maybe very weak in expressing God in much more creative ways. And so having a diverse congregation means that we can express God in a greater breadth of ways. We can experience a greater variety of gifts. And so God gives different gifts to different people. And often these gifts relate, for instance, to education, that certain kinds of gifts lead to people pursuing and being successful in higher education. If we have people of only one level of education, then we might miss out on gifts that would be less common in that community. And so with that diversity, we are able to share the gospel better in a diverse world. And Paul describes in 1 Corinthians 9 the ways that he endeavored to be different kinds of people, whether it was to be somebody who was living in a Jewish community or in a Gentile community, the Greek community. When we are a diverse community, then we are better able to communicate in a native way with people who also are of a variety of backgrounds. And we are better able to understand God and to show his wisdom. And God intends for his church to show the breadth of his wisdom, not just a narrow slice of it. So there are many benefits of diversity. And so we highly value that. At the same time, we recognize that there is real complexity. It can be harder. It is generally simpler if people speak the same language from the same culture and have the same perspective on things. It can be challenging to understand people at the most basic level when our core languages, our mother languages, are different. And it can be challenging. Even when we speak the same language but from a different part of the country or a different part of the world, often we misunderstand each other, and that can make it hard to love each other. And it is harder to live and to work together when our values are different and we didn't realize they would be. We do recognize that it can be more complex to live together, and yet we still value it, right? Even in that complexity, we say the benefits are great. And so, what do? Well, we want to respond in good ways by pursuing unity. We want to keep the unity that is ours in Christ. And so this unity that is in Christ is so real and so powerful, and we want to pursue that. At the same time, we want to pursue diversity in Christ. We believe that if we don't pursue it, our natural tendency is to lose it, that we will naturally gravitate toward people who are similar to us. And so we need to pursue diversity in Christ. And we want to do it in all aspects of our life together, in our leadership, in our ministries. Our life together as the early church experienced this in Acts 6 when they needed to pursue diversity in their leadership because the existing leadership was not very effective with the new populations that they were that were becoming a part of their body. We realize that we need to walk in humility. And in many ways, this is perhaps the most fundamental aspect of who we are, that we need to recognize our own understanding is limited, our perspectives are limited, and we're inclined to put ourselves first and our own ways of engaging in the world first. We need to walk in humility, and especially in an expectation of learning. That we expect that when we engage with people who are different from ourselves in whatever category, that there is important learning that can take place, a way in which we are enriched in our lives. So we want to be comfortable with a healthy discomfort. There are certainly bad kinds of discomfort, but we believe that there is also a very rich, good kind of a healthy discomfort that says we give priority to others, that we put the needs of others before ourselves, and this is uncomfortable, and yet this is a good thing. It's to recognize this is not organized around us. It's not made just for ourselves. And so we give priority to others in a community where we know that others, in their turn, will give priority to us. And in all of our differences, we put them under Christ. We recognize that not all differences are godly differences. Sometimes they are much better than what I am used to. Sometimes they're just different, and sometimes differences are in fact wrong. And so all of these we put under Christ. So the basic idea, we deeply value both unity and diversity. We believe that God has intended both, and so we as a church want to find the good ways to live in the unity that we have in Christ, given the rich diversity of his body as he has designed it, as he has created it, and in the vision that he has given of his church for eternity, of rejoicing and giving praise to him and living in wonderful ways in the midst of people from every tribe and people and language and nation.